So common, you see, Team GB, and you picked a Cockney to introduce. You know what I mean? So yes, if people want to know what I really sound like, I advise you to watch Mary Poppins and look out for that brilliant accent by Dick Van Dyke, because that's what I sound like in real life. Anyway, we've got a question straight away. I'm going to just mute Jonathan for a second because he's scrabbling away. And the boss is here at last. Hey, Jonathan, what would you like to say tonight?
Nothing of much utility, I don't think. I've just come off 2 long podcasts, so I'm a bit fried, but I'll probably try and say something constructive today, if at all possible. But welcome to the live stream tonight, if you're just joining now.
Yeah, we missed you. We was in here, talking about you, basically. So if your ears were burning, that's why. Let's get straight down to a question, which I think is interesting. Andy 828, what are the pros and cons of consuming coconut oil? Anyone want to go for that first?
Yeah, I'll jump in. Very high in saturates. It's the highest fat in terms of saturates, and it's got a lot of medium chain triglycerides in it. So very good for oral health, good for putting on your skin, good for lots of things. Kills fleas as well. But like any oil or fat from the plant kingdom, it can't transmit or store the fat-soluble vitamins, so A, D, and K. There are some oils from the plant kingdom that contain vitamin E, like wheat germ oil or something like that. There's a couple that have vitamin E, so it's okay, but it's not entirely species appropriate. But as far as linoleic acid content and stuff like that, it's in a completely different league to vegetable oils, so-called vegetable oils like safflower, sunflower, canola, and rapeseed and stuff like that. So yeah, it's got its uses for sure.
Right. Well, let's get you off the screen then and get everyone back on. My system is playing up incredibly tonight. Don't know why, but it looks like it's going to be just you on the screen at the moment. Yeah.
All
But that's okay.
I'll get my collection of marionettes and puppets out, and we'll recreate. Oh, here we go.
Here we go. There we go. Anyone else want to have a go on the coconut oil?
Yeah, can I jump in there? So coconut oil, it's again, it's not species appropriate per se. But what I would say is within our community, MCTs, medium chain triglycerides, can confer a benefit because of their ability to convert into ketones incredibly quickly, whether you are ketogenic or not, particularly C8. Caprylic acid. So caprylic acid is sent straight to the liver through the hepatic portal vein, and it's almost instantly converted into beta hydroxybutyrate. And again, that's whether you are ketogenic or not. Confers a benefit in regards to adaptation, because the production of BHB, or beta hydroxybutyrate, signals the body to ramp up another pathway called MCT, which is the monocarboxylate transporters and specific enzymes within the cell that allow us to utilize BHB for energy. So initially, when you begin a low-carb, ketogenic, carnivore type lifestyle, the body wastes much of the ketones because it's inefficient. So it will waste things like acetoacetate and acetone, which is what you're detecting on your breath and in the urine. And it takes months and months and months, in some cases up to 12 months, in order to adapt and have the body able to produce and utilize beta hydroxybutyrate. And what you will find when that happens is the amount of BHB in the blood becomes less and less, not because you're doing anything wrong, but because the body's more efficient. So C8 is incredibly good at energy, producing mental clarity. C8 in particular is the most antimicrobial substance available at a doctor's prescription. It's been clinically proven to improve the gut microbiome, help with intestinal permeability. It's an incredible compound. How dare I say it? It does come from plants, but if it's something I incorporated early on along my journey, and I still do. So that I've got a powder version in there, along with my exogenous ketones that I also take for various reasons that I won't go into today. But I believe saturated fats to be the healthiest. in regards to nutrient absorption, the production of hormones. But if you're looking for this instant mental clarity, if you're looking for a natural substance to help fight off viruses, infections, increase your immune system, help repair intestinal permeability, then MCT is an incredible tool to have. And it's 18 times more potent than coconut oil itself. So it's derived from coconut oil. Around 6% of coconut oil is caprylic acid. And then basically what we do is withdraw all of those 6%, if you like, and put it into one pure bottle at 99.9%, the world's highest purity. Fantastic compound, not from an animal source, but it is one of my guilty pleasures. I must I must admit, I brush my teeth in the MCT. I use it as lotion. So if I go to have a sports massage, if you visit these places frequently, what you'll find is the oils that they use are very high in oxidized omega-6s in vegetable oils or seed oils. Now, even though you're not ingesting orally, what you put on your skin is still absorbed within the body. So be careful with that, because we make all of these changes in order to be as strict as we can, and then it sort of not all goes out the window, but we make all of these efforts to be as strict as we can, and then we put these compounds on our body, and you've probably noticed the downstream effects of when you fill your car up with diesel and you get a little bit on your hands, and it starts to irritate and feel absolutely disgusting. But I use it for that purpose. So I use it as a lotion, and I give a bottle to the gentleman and the lady that does my sports massage. So yeah, I think it's a fantastic combo. My preference is for the oil over coconut, but then there are arguments to add both. But saturated fat is number one, I think, as far as health and well-being. That's the one we can't be without.
That's great, actually. And I want to thank you and Sarah for pointing that out, because obviously I was using those oils that you pointed out in my rehab, and now I use MCT oil. So it's funny, isn't it? I think one of the good things about this is that sometimes you overlook the obvious, and I certainly did do that. So we got told off, guys, last week for waffling on and too many of us answering. So if you don't unmute, I'm assuming you don't want to answer. So that's okay. Right. Let's go on to the next question then. Lovely Helen Forrest. Is it okay to drink coffee with grass-fed butter and coconut oil? I think it's just going on from what we've just said. Do you think that that's okay? Go for it, Ben.
Do you mean? Oh, sorry, Ben. Go on.
Short answer: if you're okay with coffee and you're okay with coconut oil and you're okay with grass-fed butter, then why not? It really is got to be one of those things that's down to the individual. The debate about whether coffee has a place will go on until the end of time. Yeah, I mean, I drink coffee and I'm in two minds about it. I've given it up lots. I'm really good at giving it up. I'm excellent. No one's better than me at giving it up. You know, giving it up like 30 times, and I quite tend to go back to it. Yeah, if your body's all right with it, then and you like it, you enjoy it, why not?
I think that's a great answer. I mean, one of the things you could do if you're worried about not being able to give up, why don't you give up giving up, and then that'd be one thing that you've given up. Anyway, right, Phil in the red corner.
Cool. Yeah, just a couple of things to sort of put the kibosh on it. If you, as Ben says, if you're all right with it and you feel okay with it, then great. But you know, coffee is a neurotoxin, and as we've seen on the Big Fat Challenge, I was blown away because it's the one thing I've never become addicted to, and the horrible withdrawals people were having as they came off it. It can't be that great. And coconut oil, well, we've covered that. I don't think it's as nutritious as animal fats, and I used to get 25 kilo buckets of it, and one day my body just said I've had enough. That was many years ago. But yeah, as Richard said, I do still use it as a lotion every now and again, and use it for oil pulling. But butter, again, I was delighted to see Ken Berry bring out a short today saying there are no animals that drink dairy in adulthood. And I will jump onto the side of the vegans on this one and say that if you can take it, it's absolutely delicious. I wish I could eat it all day long. But if you've got something autoimmune, some kind of gut issue or whatever, then dairy isn't your friend for many reasons. And it can also stall weight loss, especially in women. So if you like it, go ahead. We're not dogmatic, but you know, it's not as ideal as a great big hunk of fatty short ribs or something. Come on.
I think that's a great answer. And obviously, Rich, you wanted to jump in?
Yeah, only really quickly, I agree with everything there. I think when it comes to all of these things, it depends on where you are on your journey. The further down the rabbit hole you go, the more stricter you become, and you remove these compounds one by one until you're a strict carnivore. With coffee, there are negative effects. Most of the talk seem to be around the caffeine because it is a neurotoxin. It can affect the glutamate to GABA ratio and lead to it leads to adrenal fatigue. It can lead to anxiety, depression. But the biggest thing for me is the acrylamide, which is a known carcinogen. I won't go into too much detail about that today. But again, it can confer a benefit. It is a fat mobilizer. It is an ergogenic aid. It's known to improve athletic performance. So I think it's goal specific. I think if you are going to the gym or you're competing, it's a fantastic tool to implement. Something I wouldn't introduce too often if you can be without it. And again, with the dairy, in an ideal world, when you begin in a journey, we're adding fat to our coffee and it's fantastic. And that's brilliant because you're exponentially fitter and healthier than you were when you were eating. There's far worse things to consume, but rightly so, it contains toxic compounds, highly addictive, casomorphine, which can lead to weight gain, as Phil said. And so it depends on where you are on your journey. Pick your poison. But what I would say with butter is if you are fasting, technically, and this is a technicality because there's loads of other avenues to look at with this, it could technically break a fast, but a C8 doesn't because it's sent straight to the hepatic portal vein to the liver. But having said that, the benefit of fasting, you could argue, is heavily negated by your body's ability to be ketogenic because all of the benefits from fasting you will elicit from being in a ketogenic state. So that's another one for a debate. It could probably last a few hours, but yeah, just my 2 pence.
Yeah, that's great. A lot of 2 pence. I think since the beginning of doing Team GB, I think we've had £2 worth now. So that's good. I'm liking that. Just my 2 pence is it does depend what you replace coffee with. If you take coffee out and replace it with something that is actually even more detrimental, and that I'm just thinking of a couple of clients that did try to get rid of coffee, and before they knew it, they were snacking and doing other things, which was because they were missing coffee so much. Now I know that is saying, well, yeah, they did it wrong, but I live in the real world, and they were doing better with coffee. Maybe 2 coffees a day, and certainly with a Swiss water decaf or something like that, which is, what I would drink. They were doing better than without coffee, but it was because they put something else in. If you can get it out and keep it out and not replace it with something that's not beneficial, then obviously that's going to be good. Right. And some nice questions, actually. This coconut oil stuff has really ignited people in the comments. So is there any absorption through the skin or scalp if plant oils are used as a moisturizer, specifically flaxseed oil? Who's going for that one?
Yes.
Jonathan.
That's about it. That's all I've got to say.
Right. Well, there is one coming up for Jonathan, but yes, I mean, your skin is your biggest organ. Well, my second biggest, but that was a joke, by the way. And it's porous. You can absorb things through the skin, and it is my second favorite organ. Right, let's go on to the next one. I'm bringing the tone down. Sorry, it's Phil's job normally, but we missed it.
Skin absorption is less than sticking it in your mouth. Digestion is obviously the
Ben. Good God, I'm going to have to red card both of you now. It's ridiculous. It's a powerful image.
But flaxseed oil also is not the worst. It's not the worst offender. It's quite high in alpha linolenic acid. It's got oleic acid, I think, as well as another one. So it's not as bad. as vegetable oils. So I wouldn't
Yeah.
worry overly much about that one.
Yes. I think I'm getting used to the buttons. They've changed the knobs on StreamYard. There you go, Phil. Give you 3 in a row. Right. I think Jonathan might dive into this one. I'm not sure. I think Richard. Well, anyway, let's ask the question. Aaron is asking, for a guy who burns calories like a Ferrari. Wow, how fast or easy is it to put on muscle on the carnivore diet? As I've heard, this is a weight loss diet. So yeah, feel free for all.
Can I just quickly jump in before Jonathan, because I was going to hand this one over to Jonathan anyway, but this is off my YouTube channel. But it's not a weight loss diet. It's a restoring your health and natural weight diet. So it will just take you to what is your natural weight with the level of exercise that you're doing at the time. So yes, it will burn fat if you need to. It will put on bone density and muscle mass if you need to, but only up to a certain point. Past that, you have to train. And on that note, I'm going to hand over to Jonathan, because he is the carnivore muscle building expert.
Apparently, there's a few of us here we could probably collaborate quite well and speak on this topic. I would say, could you build as much muscle as you could naturally with a carbohydrate or mixed macronutrient diet with a carnivore diet? Yes, it'd be pretty much the same. I'd say identical if anything. You'll notice your digestion's better, your sleep's better, you assimilate food better. Sorry, I've got a little doggy here. Say hello. George. Bruce? Oh, he's gone. Anyway, sorry. Yeah, so I think it's like you said, it's a body optimization diet, and that in turn will play a part in making sure you optimize your health outcomes. I'd say in terms of muscle building, you won't be bigger than me following a carnivore diet. I promise you that. I absolutely promise you that. You won't be as big as Sean Baker following a carnivore diet. That's pretty much all there is to say to it. You're giving your body the essential nutrients, the protein and fat. You're sleeping better, you're recovering better from the workouts. And providing you train, like Phil said, that's about as much info as you can really give. I suggest you try out for yourself and see. Like kind of what Phil said as well, if you're trying to gain a lot of muscle, you're going to have to train, you're going to have to eat a lot more food. Some people, they just don't have great appetites and they end up just stuck at their genetic set point. And that is an absolute fact. There are people out there who will have a fat-free mass index. I recommend checking that out online, ffmicalculator.org. Put some stats in, it'll give you an idea or a recognizable amount of what you can achieve with training and a good diet. I think most people with a good diet and training could probably get to about 21 or 22 fat-free mass index. Beyond that, you're looking at gear, juice, PEDs, or just being very, very, very genetically gifted. So I'll probably look at finding a way to measure how good your results are and going from there. Richard might be able to chime in as well in this talk, if he's got anything to say.
Yeah, I agree with everything. The one thing that I would add to that is potentially your ability would be enhanced, I believe, when carnivore. And I say this because carbohydrates do not build muscle at all, zero whatsoever. Contrary to popular belief, carbs do not build muscle. They increase muscle protein synthesis by that much. What does increase muscle protein synthesis is the co-ingestion of protein with fat, which is what we are doing when we live a carnivore lifestyle. But there are other added benefits to this. If we look at a standard bodybuilder diet, we're eating rice and potatoes and pasta along with our meat, our protein. The beauty of being carnivore is that we are not eating those foods. Now, those foods contain compounds like lectins and phytic acid, which block the absorption of things like zinc, iron, and magnesium by as much as 100%. Zinc is essential for the production of testosterone. So consuming anything with phytic acid in is absolutely counterintuitive to building muscle to the maximum capacity. The lectins bind the microvilli, little fingers in our gut. And what happens is when we consume food, they bind to the microvilli and we absorb all of these nutrients. But the lectins bind to these microvilli, causing a smaller surface area. So despite consuming that big piece of steak or chicken, whatever your go-to is, less nutrients are going to be absorbed because the surface area has been massively reduced. So I would argue that a well-formulated ketogenic diet alongside a proper training regime would confer bigger benefit. But again, I bounce that back to you guys. Maybe you've got something else to add.
I've got nothing to add because I think we can go on to the next question. I think that's they're brilliant answers, actually. So let's go for the next one. And what I like is, and I think this is partly to do with Phil and Ben being here, is it's carnivore and beyond, if you don't mind me stealing that phrase. So Rycam02, Richard, do you have any strategies for dealing with air pollution that you're exposed to from the steel works in Neath? But let's broaden it out to environmental things. So just what strategies do you have for dealing with air pollution? So I suppose as it's to Richard, you go first, Rich.
Yeah, I mean, first of all, Neath, I'm just outside Port Talbot, which is where the steelworks are. The area that suffers the worst is the Margam Port Talbot area. So I'm a little bit away from there. I don't believe that it's a massive burden where I am. But that said, these toxins are in the atmosphere. But the best way, I believe, is through our diet and lifestyle. I'm not a big believer in lots of antioxidants from plants and things which a lot of people will take to remove toxic compounds from the body are a myth. They're medications. They're not actually antioxidants, they're pro-oxidants. They activate something called the NRF2 pathway, which is an oxidative stress pathway. And what scientists see when we take these compounds is an elevation in glutathione, but glutathione has been elevated to conjugate that toxin, to excrete it from the body. So these compounds that we put in, that we believe are antioxidants, are actually pro-oxidants. There's only one compound on Earth from nature, and it comes from animals. That's a compound called astaxanthin that is a true antioxidant. But living this lifestyle is absolutely antioxidant. This anti-inflammatory. Living the lifestyle, I believe, is if you will live in a strict ketogenic carnivore lifestyle, then your body is going to be functioning to the best of its capability. I don't believe that you need to supplement with additional supplementation or medication in order to remove these compounds. I believe the body will do that for you naturally, but maybe the guys have got something else to add.
Well, there was I thinking Ben and Phil would be all over this, but there you go. Shows what an idiot I am. So here we go to the next one. Helen, she's come back with this, and I'm including this because this is a real common thing for people that do give up coffee. And this is what she says. I could easily give up the butter. The coffee, every time I try to give up the coffee, I get terrible migraines that last weeks until I finally have another cup of coffee. And I think that is a very similar story to many people. Ben?
Yeah, I don't know about migraines lasting weeks. So, I mean, I've had like a 48-hour headache. But are you going cold turkey or are you weaning off? Because what might make more sense is just to make it weaker and weaker and weaker over a few days, and then finally stop it. But headaches, if you stop cold turkey, are well known. So what we tend to do is to advise people to taper it down. But yeah,
generally reduce the dose, I think, is the best way. Some people can try cold turkey, and if they get the headaches, think, right, well, that didn't work. So next time, instead of having my 3 cups a day, I'll have 2 cups a day, or I won't have so much in volume, So I think that's a good way of looking at it. And slowly but surely, you'll edge yourself away from drinking that. I like this comment. This is not a question. I just like this comment. This is from Andrew Scarborough. A slap in the face isn't as bad as a kick in the nads. So, sage advice from Andrew there. His story is amazing. If we could get him on, Phil, I mean, I know you're a good friend of Andrew's.
Well, logically speaking, a kick in the nads is worse than childbirth. Of course. No, because we all know, women who've given birth, and then a couple of years later they go, I might have another baby. Have you ever met a bloke who says, I could really fancy another kick in the nads? So there you go. Yeah,
exactly. Same thing with kidney stones as well. I remember when I had them back in 2012, and two separate nurses said to me, I've had kidney stones and childbirth, and I can tell you kidney stones is worse. Anyway. There we go. And I've never looked forward to another one, I have to say.
Yeah.
But there was a question we missed up there, Stephen. It's something about macadamia nut oil. And
I'll go for it.
Omega 7s.
I did miss it. Macadamia nuts. I've not seen it.
Talking about kicks in the nuts. But yeah, well, Andrew, anytime you want to jump on, Andrew, jump on. Because story
I can't find that question, but
you keep going up and
Matthew at 709 on mine.
Yeah,
I know that macadamia nuts are insanely Moorish when they're salty.
Oh yeah, you're right. Yeah, great. Yes, I wonder who'd be first to spot that. Well done, Phil. That was my deliberate mistake.
Well,
obviously,
not that I know anything about it, but I don't know. I mean, my thoughts on macadamia nuts are that my missus used to buy them, and I always found them very disappointing. I think the only really Moorish nuts are peanuts, which aren't really nuts in the first place, and everything else you're sort of trying to be healthy and eat something that isn't quite as nice as peanuts. So that's my view on macadamias. I don't think they taste very nice, and I think they're a bit of a waste of time. But anyone got anything more intelligent than that?
Not really.
Jonathan, yeah, let's go for it.
Yeah, so I investigated this when I was running a health food shop. Everyone bought macadamia nuts. So I was like, oh, it's high in omega 7. I was like, okay, great. Is that an essential nutrient? Kind of, yeah. But can your body produce it from the cascade of omega 3 into omega 6, so on and so forth? Yes. You don't absolutely require to add that into your diet. It's kind of like the thought of, I don't know, like retinol versus, what's the other one? Beta carotene. Your body recognizes retinol. It's one it uses. Beta carotene isn't absolutely essential. The body will convert, like I said, omega 3 and 6 up the chain. So omega 3, technically speaking, is the only omega 3 acid you actually need. So I investigated this because I was like, how many products am I actually selling which are absolutely useless out here? And macadamia nuts and omega 7 were absolutely 2 of them. So there we go.
Cool. I was expecting Rich to chime in there, but okay.
Yeah. Really quickly, I will jump in. Look, I've taken up way too much of the stage, but just to add to that, macadamia nut is lectin free. So I would argue it's probably one of the better of the nuts to consume. Peanut butter is high in mycotoxins and phytic acid and lectins. Macadamia nut at least is lectin free, so you're not going to get that damage to the intestines. So it's not going to cause intestinal permeability. So it's probably the lesser of two evils. But in an ideal world, I'd keep it out. It was a major part of my diet when I was transitioning. I used to love nut butter. I used to eat buckets of the stuff. Started with peanut, and then it went to hazelnut, and then became macadamia, and now it's no nut. So lesser of two evils, but I think ideally, to come away from all nut butters completely, or nut oils even.
Yeah, I think one of the things that shines through all of this is whenever it's not animal based, there's always provisos. It's probably all right if you don't have that much, or if you and I think in the end, this is a Carnivore Team GB, so we can quite categorically say that if you can dump all that stuff, you're probably going to be better in the long run. So the next question here, unless I've missed one, DC. Oh, a nice picture of Groucho Marx there, and he said Karl Marx. Anyway, what is your opinion? Is the problem with people who can't digest rendered fats? Yeah, Jonathan, go for it, man.
Yeah, it's to do with a hydrolysis reaction. So some people might have not upregulated the enzyme need to break down rendered fats. So that's why they might absorb it better, digest it better. It doesn't run straight through them if they actually take in fats which are in a whole form. So, for example, we'd be looking at beef fat, unadulterated, uncooked, unprocessed, versus beef tallow or beef dripping. Some people get issues with other fats as well. I seem to get issues with MCT oil when it's in the liquid form, but I don't get the same kind of experience when it's in the solid form, which is bizarre. But I can actually use Richard's product, which is an MCT powder, and that doesn't give me any digestive issues whatsoever. I can actually absorb that. So it seems to be an enzymatic process rather than an absolute intolerance or allergy. So I think it's certainly possible for people to actually upregulate the enzymes need to break it down, assuming they have a good liver function. But I think Richard will probably know a bit more about this one if he's got anything to say.
I think you've covered everything, and nothing to add really. But thanks for the shout out. It's the powder is a fantastic alternative if you do struggle. Many people struggle with the oil initially. We've gone from this environment of not consuming fats to overindulging sometimes, isn't it? But the powder is definitely well accepted within the body. But no, I agree completely.
Yeah, and I think, Richard, don't worry about if you're on more than everybody else. Firstly, then they're not unmuting their mic. And, you know, if it's about electrolytes and the production of electrolytes, you're the man. I mean, you know, and if it's reversing arthritis, then Phil's going to have a lot to say. It's just the way it is. That's the whole point of the panel, I think, for each one of us to chime in, you know, and if you just want a stupid remark that makes nobody laugh except myself, then that's me. Right, so here we go. Let's have a
Can I do a quick one on the oil? I mean, the rendered fats thing I've seen in people, and you know, to see the sort of science of it is pretty interesting. I've just seen it in people with some sort of compromised gallbladder issues sometimes, but a lot of people get around it with just slicing up some good beef fat and not rendering it into tallow. And you think you have to go totally raw carnivore. Some people have gone raw carnivore because of that issue, but raw beef fat is actually pretty good. And you can just take a slice of that, like you'd slice a bit off the butter and put it onto a cooked steak, for example, if you're trying to up the fats without going for the rendered ones. And I've seen that work wonders with people as well. So that's all I got.
Yeah, that's cool. Tom J just really making a comment on something here. Phil, there is a short video by Tom Laris showing animals drinking milk from different animal species straight from the teat. Give that a look.
Yeah, I've heard about this and I've seen examples of this. And yeah, it can happen, but how often does it happen? You know, I mean, probably not very often, and most animals don't really have access to it, and are probably not taking it in enough amounts to create an issue. Plus, dairy is addictive. It really is. It's hyper palatable. You give a cat a saucer of milk, it's going to drink it. But I just don't give our cat a saucer of milk because it's species inappropriate, and he is unlikely to be suckling from any species, even his own, at this age. So I don't give him a saucer of milk, but everybody used to. I mean, it's even in all the cartoons, isn't it? A cat likes a saucer of milk. And so, yeah, animals will eat that stuff. Yeah, they love dairy, but as do we. But they generally don't get access to it. And if there's an exception, that's great. You know, there's a wonderful video out there, isn't there, of all the animals picking up the amarula fruits that are rotten, and they all get drunk. But does that mean, you know, animals are alcoholics? I don't think so generally, but it's an amusing video either way. So yeah, I am aware of that.
I mean, that is a great point actually about the cats and the milk source. So the cafe we go to, they outside leave a saucer of milk for a local cat. Our dog, who's a raw meat carnivore, if there's any milk left over, because what happens when we go there, if they've just put the saucer out and the cat will scarper, Rupert's straight in there. You know, he loves that milk, you know, so, but it's rare, like you say. Now, this one is going to ignite absolutely a few people here. What do you guys think about creatine and weightlifting? Which is a really broad question. What do you think about it? Jonathan?
Well, for me, quickly, it's a long time ago that I ever took that stuff. And I took it when I was running a gym back in the late 90s. And I believe that it did help. However, and I'd like somebody's opinion on this because I've never asked this question myself, it used to make me cramp up quite quickly. Now, I remember a time where I was taking it and I was training and I didn't notice any problem. But then I did my favorite mountain biking downhill, which is Skiddaw, near Keswick in the Lake District. And I had my son with me, who was only about 10 years old at the time. And as you can imagine, I ended up having to carry 2 bikes up a mountain to get up high enough to do the downhill. And I had to stop every sort of, I don't know, 50 yards or something for a rest because my calves were cramping up so much. And on the way down, the same happened with my forearms hanging onto the brakes. And I found that creatine used to give me a bunch of cramps. So if anyone can explain that alongside answering the other question, I'd be very grateful. Somebody's got the science on that, Jonathan or Richard, probably.
Do you mean to go looking at me there? Yeah, I think it's fantastic. When we look at a keto carnivore based lifestyle, the first thing that people say is you need carbohydrate for energy, you need carbohydrate for power. Well, you don't need it for either. And when you look at the energy system utilized in order to lift heavy weights, it's the PC system, it's the phosphocreatine energy system. So for a short spell, these heavier lifts are coming from the PC system. And we can upregulate that through the supplementation of using creatine. Monohydrate is the one that I believe to be the best. All of these other ones that have come on the market that are 3, 4, 5 times the price, and they say that they've got all of these special compounds, is utter rubbish. The only one that has ever conferred a benefit to me when I was taking it, when I was bodybuilding, was creatine monohydrate, and it's the cheapest, but it massively improved my lifts because of the volume that it adds to the muscle. And I believe that this is why anabolic steroids make you stronger as well. Obviously, there is a hormonal effect to this, but it's the volume in the muscle. And when we look at specific anabolic steroids like Dianabol, which are known for making people incredibly big, incredibly quickly, and incredibly strong, when they stop that compound, all of their size goes and so does their strength, which means that they haven't built muscle. It's the volume in the muscle. And this is what creatine is doing, as well as fueling those top lifts. Creatine is also incredibly good for the brain. The beauty is, if you are carnivore, eating around 1 kilogram of beef is going to give you 5 grams of creatine naturally. I've practiced and experimented with supplementing with all sorts of ranges from 5 grams up to 25 grams per day. What I found was optimal for me was 5 grams pre-training, anytime pre-training, or 5 grams post-training. It massively improved my physique, give me a much harder, drier look. Essential for competing as well. I found it an incredible tool, but it's really good for the brain. I'm a big fan of creatine, but as Phil said, since I have been cycling and running, I've had to take it out due to cramps. So it's my lower back cramps up incredibly quickly on creatine. I think it's to do with the calcium to magnesium ratio. This is what causes cramps typically. Many people will supplement with more magnesium if they're cramping, but what a lot of people are doing is they're ingesting more calcium. So calcium excites the muscle, and then magnesium calms it down. And we need both. We need both within the muscle, within the cell, in order to create that contraction. But in society, we consume lots and lots of calcium. But if we look at nature and we look at the ratio of electrolytes found in beef and all sorts of other animals, with the exception of things like eggs and milk, because these are designed to feed animals from birth or to grow animals, we see that the highest is in fact potassium. That's about 4 times higher than sodium. And then we drop right the way down to magnesium and calcium, which are almost on par with each other, depending on the source of the meat. But as a society, we supplement with calcium to no end because we believe that it confers a benefit. But supplementation of calcium will increase or can increase risk of cardiovascular disease by as much as 15%. And even consuming from natural sources over 700 milligrams per day. And if you were to look at the food that you eat, even on a carnivore-based lifestyle, we can comfortably hit 300 to 500 milligrams without adding in any milk or excess cheese. This is why, coming back to Phil's point earlier, excess milk and cheese is not preferenced if you are looking for optimal health. The overconsumption of calcium, I think, can be detrimental. And yes, we can negate some through the supplementation of calcium, but only from a cramping perspective. But it's not as nature intended. So I was going to go off on something else there, but I've lost my trail of thought. So.
More creatine.
Let's talk about creatine again, shall we, guys? That was useful talk there. It definitely makes sense in terms of like the sodium potassium pump and cell volumizing. I think the dose optimally for most people is between 5 and 10 grams per day. I believe you can supplement it whenever you want. It doesn't matter when you take it. What I found myself is when I seem to be saturated with creatine in my muscle cells, it seems that I end up urinating a lot. So it's like my body's trying to get rid of it. So that could be why Phil is potentially cramping up a little bit when he's used it in the past. Now, sometimes I'll use maybe 5 gram scoop of it, creatine monohydrate, like Richard said. around training or around any given day when I'm not eating much meat, particularly red meat such as beef. Perhaps one day I'm eating just a pound of red meat, in which case, yeah, I might add in a scoop of creatine. Outside of that, I don't really bother that much. It doesn't seem to be a massive driver for me. There are such things as non-responders to creatine in that they don't notice any performance benefit at all. I can't speak on the percentage of people that happens to, but it does exist. In regards to weightlifting, I don't like weightlifting. I prefer resistance training, and I prefer even more than that bodybuilding. So there's distinct definitions there, but that's my take on the question, as I can read it anyway. So yeah.
Yeah, spot on. I thought about the urination sort of part of creatine, but then it's holding water in the muscle, which would lead to believe that it's, you know, you're depleting the water or, you know, from somewhere else. But it's a confusing one. But it definitely causes cramping for me. If I wasn't doing long distance cycling and running, I would be supplementing with creatine. And if you were not doing those, as Andrew has put in the comments, it's incredibly good for the brain. But being carnivore, we get plenty from our natural sources, especially beef. Is about 5 grams, as I say, per kilogram. So beef and lamb, preference your beef and lamb.
Talking of food, Living Carnivore UK, my husband and I, very royal, have been practicing fasting 36 hours for his cancer treatment, and good luck with that. We are never hungry and worried that we are not eating enough. Should we force it?
Can I jump in really quickly? So your body is telling you not to eat. Fasting is fantastic for cancer prevention. So cancer is caused by mitochondrial dysfunction. Glucose becomes fermented and turns into lactic acid, and it's the same with glutamine. So glucose and glutamine are the 2 drivers of cancer. But fasting is absolutely incredible, and I think that we should, in that case, we should listen to our body. We're constantly conflicted by the need for our body for nutrients. I'm working with a guy currently who is going through cancer treatment, and we've arranged food for him with the proviso based on around 2 or twice the volume of fat to protein in grams. So for every gram of protein, and we've based that on 0.8 of his body weight, 0.8 grams per pound of his body weight, and 2 grams or twice the volume of fat to that, but with a proviso that if he's not hungry, that he doesn't eat. And the reason that we've suggested that is when we look at the early research in regards to cancer fighting, and it's a doctor let his patient go something like 40 days without eating, and he was then cancer-free. And as long as you are not ridiculously lean and need the nutrients, I believe fasting is a fantastic tool. So I wouldn't be scared to fast. And if you are eating, obviously red meat is a fantastic contributor to that, but we need lots of fat with it as well, roughly twice the volume in grams of fat to protein. And we've got an expert with us, obviously in Andrew Scarborough, who can probably add more to this. And as he rightly says, in what kind of cancer, because that is also very important. But cancers, it's mitochondrial dysfunction. So I'm a big fan of fasting in regards to cancer treatment.
Yeah, I feel a bit conscious with Andrew there, because, you know, I know he's sort of sitting on my shoulder and going, "What are you talking about?" or something. But I believe that I've become a big fan of dry fasting. And I think there are ways in which it preserves muscle mass, which water fasting doesn't. And I lost an enormous amount of muscle mass back in 2010, 2011, when I was doing a load of fasting to try and get rid of psoriatic arthritis. And it didn't, because every time I started eating again, it would come back, because I hadn't figured out to go carnivore. So I was doing all this plant-based nonsense and juicing and whatever. But it totally takes away those the symptoms of it. But with cancer, there are specific things. There are, sometimes I've heard, studies showing that ketosis can be very useful in getting rid of cancer, and sometimes it doesn't. But I think, as Richard said, it's a mitochondrial issue, and the quickest way to get into really sort of heavy autophagy and apoptosis is dry fasting. And there is that magical period of about 11 days, which, you know, two separate Russian researchers pretty much came up with. I think one is called Filanov. And, you know, you go through the acidotic crises, you go through producing a lot of stem cells. And, you know, it's a serious undertaking, maybe 11 days dry fasting. But as long as the heart rate doesn't go up over 120, which is one of the sort of signs that you're getting into some electrolyte issues. I've heard a load of what we all call, well, what most other people call useless anecdotes of it sort of blowing up tumors. But another interesting one was a guy that we met on our 2019 Carnivore conference in Spain. And he was there because he had done, he's been hiding away in Dublin. He's an Australian guy. Been hiding away in Dublin for many years, fixing people's cancer and keeping his head below the parapet in case, you know, he ends up face down in a swimming pool or something, because, you know, the drug lords don't really like it when people end up reversing cancer. But he was doing a program of 3 days fasting, 1 day feasting, 3 days fasting, 1 day feasting, and having incredible results with that. But he found out that when he was doing that program, putting people on that program, the feasting day on the fourth day, 1, 2, 3, 4, was even more effective if it was carnivore. And so he was getting people to go through that cycle until the tumors had blown up. And that was kind of an interesting approach, I thought. As far as I know, he was doing water fasting in between, but I wonder if it might be more effective to do like a day or two of dry fasting and then a big sort of fatty carnivore feast. I don't know. It's a fascinating area. Lots of people have found success with cancer with different approaches, but I think fasting is a huge one, particularly dry fasting can be extremely useful for getting the body to sort of mop up all the cells which have some problem, you know, the sort of cysts, tumors, whatever. It's a very, very quick way there.
Excellent. Rich, I know you've been on a lot. Just a quick question. Richard, you mentioned about setting up a mail order meat service with your butcher. How's that going? Do you know when you will be able to start this?
Yes, I'll pop a link in the comments. That is set up. It's from a company in Wales. It's all grass-fed, grass-finished, top quality, all sorts of beef. I'm working with them to bring out a better line because they obviously they're uneducated in the means of quality of meats and stuff, and a lot of their stuff is lean, which isn't ideal for us. But for now, if you're looking for leaner cuts, I'll pop the link in there. But I am working with them over the next couple of weeks, and we're going to bring out a line of proper quality beef and mince and rusk-free burgers and sausages. But I'll pop the link in the comments now. But that is up and running, so feel free to check them out.
Great. That was a good question. Helen Forrest has said this. Okay, thank you for your advice, fellas. For World Carnivore Month, I will give up coffee starting January the 1st. The reason I'm putting that up there is, is anyone on the panel doing anything for World Carnivore Month, which is January? No. So
yeah,
right.
I thought I might go vegan.
Oh, well, great. Good luck, Phil.
Ever the rebel.
Yeah. Yes. Let's get into the next one. Jane of Fools, like the name. How do you all cook your ground beef / ground lamb? I find it a bit gross and I'm spending a fortune on lamb chops.
Can I jump in, because we kind of live on that, and the kids do, and whatever. Well, I find that ground lamb, it's, you know, some salt and some white pepper, and put it in a burger press and grill it or fry it or put it in an air fryer, and it makes beautiful burgers. And then you can tip all the fat over it afterwards. But if you're just talking about frying up the ground beef or ground lamb, what I like to do is I put a bunch of tallow in first, fry it up with some salt and a little bit of white pepper. But then what really makes it is like a ladle full of bone broth. And so then it turns it, because it can be a little bit dry and a little bit cloying, depending on the fat content, obviously, of the lamb or the beef, and a bit boring. But if you put a bit of bone broth in there, just when it's fried up and finished, just so that it warms it up around it, and even better if you've got some of the little crispy bits of fat from the tallow, when you've made some tallow and it's rendered down, you've got those crispy bits of fat, and then throw that in as well. And so you've got almost a stew with croutons, it tastes like. And that's my absolute favorite way of doing it. The burgers are fine. I find ground beef burgers a little bit boring. They hardly ever got high enough fat. I much prefer lamb burgers. But yeah, if you're frying it up, either way, add some good tallow that you made from some grass-fed fat, add a bit of bone broth, and then to stop it being so dry, and then put a little bit of crispy beef, what do you call them? Beef crackling in, if you like, the little bits from rendering down the tallow. That's how I do it anyway.
That's a fabulous answer. I thought we might have some other chefs coming on, but there you go. This is obviously, the highlight. A question for me. Are finger prick blood works as good as blood draw from a vein? Which is a really interesting question for me. Because if you want accuracy, they're both really good. But what's utility? Well, if you go into a clinic and have a blood draw, it's a snapshot. Yes, it's good. And you can do a range of other tests. But if you are doing a finger prick, you can do it in the morning, just before lunch, 90 minutes after lunch, just before you go to bed. So I would say if you're looking at the proper function of a blood test is to try and find out what's going on. A finger prick, when it comes to blood glucose, is absolutely brilliant. But obviously you can't extrapolate anything else from it really, other than your daily blood glucose. Of course, you could, if you've got a continual blood glucose monitor, you can check whether the HbA1c is a true reflection of what's going on, because it normally isn't if you're carnivore, but that's for another day. So yeah, great. That is a really great question. If anyone else wants to add to that, I'm fine, but I'll tell them they're wrong.
And unless you've got access to a powerful microscope and you can do live blood analysis.
Well, yes.
On the droplet.
Well, I've got a couple of those knocking at the back there if anyone wants one. So, right. Okay. Thank you, Ben. Let's go to the next question. Landers, thanks for the continued support, Landers. I read a few paragraphs on protein. I started eating eggs raw because heating protein makes it harder to absorb. Does anyone on the panel agree with these findings?
Jump in quickly. I think we've been cooking food since the human genus has been around. I think if Homo habilis, at least, and Homo erectus. So we're talking 2.5 million years probably that we've been cooking food. It's an interesting one, but I mean, I just tend to refer to nature, and just looping back around to the mince thing. I tend to have a mixture of kind of cooked and sometimes a little bit of raw as well. I'm kind of experimenting with mixing up. The raw mince is actually coming out quite sweet as well. I kind of like that, and less to chew on. But yeah, I'm sure the other guys have got more to add on the digestibility thing. But yeah, for me, deferring to nature, we've been cooking meat forever, and so I'm sure we're adapted to it by now.
Yeah, I'd like to add, sorry, Jonathan, I've got a very brief thing. They've recently found evidence of cooking fish 700,000 years ago. So there's a lot of evidence for what you're saying. Jonathan?
Yeah, I think it depends what state someone is in initially. If they're coming to a diet and they're overcooking their meat of any kind, they'll find oftentimes that will have more histamine in it. So if, for example, there's someone that cannot clear histamine very well, they'll probably be better served for actually slightly undercooking their meat. That's not to say absolutely raw. They might just find it's actually beneficial just to undercook it a little bit. So you put it in a pan, brown it, braise it, what have you, but then leave the inside a bit rare. Now, in contrast to that, if you, say, undercook it so it is absolutely raw, it'll actually have a higher concentration of taurine, which is an osmolyte, which will help you regulate your electrolyte balance, and it'll help regulate the pH in your gut. And now, if a pH is in your gut within 1.5 to 2, the enzymes that are secreted into your gut will be then able to be active. So it means that the protease, the lipase, different enzymes like that will actually be able to be activated fully and according to what your biological needs are to digest proteins and fats. Now, the other part of that question, which is about the eggs. Now, actually, I looked at some data because I was interested in this myself, and I was like, well, how can people from two different sides have contrasting opinions? And the main reason is different health statuses, be that way or that way. Now, the other thing is, if we look at data on cooked animal foods, we find the absorbability and digestibility is around 95% in isolation. So I do actually have a study which depicts that. I don't have it to hand right now, but if you email me or something, I'll be able to send you the link to it. And what they find with plant foods is around 85% at best, and that's in isolation. When it comes to eggs, the way I actually cook them is I cook the egg white, but I don't always cook the egg yolk. I only cook the egg yolk if I mix it together to make an omelette. But other than that, I think more of the nutrition would remain intact with the egg yolk uncooked. Now, not to say it's absolutely, totally that much more. It's just a bit more. So that's kind of my way of looking at it. And of course, we've got the avidin in the egg white, which is, if it's not cooked, is greater, which binds to biotin, which reduces the nutrient absorption that way. But I think for the most part, if you're on a carnivore diet, whether you cook the egg or not, it doesn't make that much difference. But I do see more people having issues with raw egg white than cooked egg white, personally. Egg yolks I can take either way. Do any of you guys have any takes on that at all?
I think we've got that answered pretty well, actually. So Blake's now got a 2-part question. So let's do this. Blake saying, I've had a methylation test and it showed a downregulation of lots of my genes. How does coffee affect catecholamines? I remember you explaining it on a podcast before and I can't find it, thanks. I also have a 40 gene which hinders the repair of DNA. Is there anything I can do to help this? I'm spending about £100 per month on supplements for poor methylation at the moment. Is that one for you, Rich? Sorry.
Yeah, I'll jump in if you want. What I would question there is that tests for methylation, when you doing gene testing, are not very accurate. You're better off testing for histamine. Histamine needs to be methylated. So if histamine is elevated, then you may have methylation issues. So I'd get histamine tested first. What we find when we are living a ketogenic carnivore-based lifestyle, that systems and pathways in the body become upregulated. So where we might think we're seeing a downregulation, the body just becomes more efficient in the same way as it does with less insulin. We need less insulin to carry out X work. Same with testosterone, which is one of the reasons that our friend Paul Saladino decided to ditch the carnivore lifestyle. But all of these systems and pathways and enzymes and hormones become upregulated. Your body has the ability to utilize them. So get the histamine tested and go from there. It's really difficult through methylation testing. When you're doing MTHFR gene tests, they are not 100% accurate. So I do that first as first port of call, and then if you're not already living a carnivore lifestyle, get on that, because we need specific cofactors in order to perform these things like our B vitamins and zinc, iron, magnesium, vitamin B12, and all sorts. But that's the short version. I think we could probably do an entire sort of we could probably spend an entire hour looking at methylation and how to upregulate. But that's a short version. I can see Jonathan's got something to add to there, so I'll leave you jump in.
Yeah, I'll keep this very succinct. I'd give this person some homework to look at outside of what they're already doing. So obviously outside of the diagnostic testing side of it, I'd look at trimethylglycine, betaine anhydrous, and riboflavin vitamin B2. I'd look at them and the interactions with methylation pathways. Beyond that, carnivore diet, health hacks, grounding, sunlight. That's about as far as I'd go if I had £1 million to spend. Outside of that, I wouldn't bother looking at anything else at all, personally. That's all.
Can I just make a quick comment on, not to do with this, but I've just been scrolling down the comments, and Christopher Ellis says, uncooked meat is liable to contain parasites and bacteria. Good luck with those. Christopher, there are a lot of people who eat nothing but raw meat. You know, there used to be Facebook groups of it. At our carnivore conference, we had several people who ate nothing but raw meat. They're absolutely fine. Now, I would be a little bit wary myself of uncooked chicken or pork, but you know, there's videos of Arjunas Vonderplanets out there sort of scoffing down raw chicken breasts, and he was absolutely fine. I think most people are absolutely fine. And once you've got the sort of your carnivore digestion on, the stomach acid is so low, the pH, that most of these things get completely sorted out. There is always that sort of danger, but you can get parasites from pretty much anything. And I think the paranoia about uncooked meat, particularly beef, you know, red meat is really overblown. We've eaten raw meat for millennia as well as cooked meat, and people still do it to this day. You know, raw carnivores, and really you don't see them get any problems with parasites. It's a bit overblown, that worry.
Yeah, absolutely. And I remember coming on your big fat challenge and giving you all the stats, because I don't know if you remember that, Phil. The FDA were looking at parasites, and now you've got to remember this is the FDA who want to find things, all right. And I will give them credit; they did reveal that they looked at 28,000 different meat samples, I think from 14 or 12 different sources, and they found parasites in 0.0004%. And to be honest, that's possibly even just a sampling error, or maybe somebody had a dirty glove. But I'm telling you, it is absolutely overblown, absolutely ridiculous point, to be honest. Sorry to be a bit blunt there, but when you look at the real stats rather than the apocryphal things going around, there's no proof of that whatsoever. And as Phil rightly said, you have a stomach acid. That's your first line of defense when it comes to what enters your body. And your stomach acid can basically break enamel and bone down, so you know a little parasite is not going to live. So there you go. Right, anyway, that's if you've got a healthy stomach acid. 2 things to go and then we'll wrap up. Co-create happy question: have any of you heard of a carnivore healing heart muscle issues like reduced ejection fraction, the ability to pump blood out of your body? Well, actually it's the ability for the left ventricle to pump out. That's what the fraction measures. Jonathan's got
I'll be really interested to hear your guys' take on this. And hello, Claudia. She's a friend of ours, friend of mine and Ben's. So yeah, off you go, guys. This will be fascinating.
Okay. Yeah, I was going to answer, but yeah, who's first then? Sorry.
I'll just say quickly. Harry Sopanos has a few videos on this, and I'd certainly look at them before anything else. Here's someone that has had this issue, I believe himself, and he's helped people with this issue. He finds that the elevated taurine content of the diet is helpful, and also vitamin K2, particularly MK4, in terms of healing, circulatory damage to the endothelium. That's where I'd be looking for this kind of answer, but you guys might have a slightly more detailed take if you know much more about it than I do, perhaps.
That is really interesting before anybody else jumps in, because that would point to the fact that it's very useful to go by that old knowledge of eat the organs that correspond to the organs that you're having trouble with. Because I was suggesting to Claudia that she perhaps added heart to her diet, and heart being very high in taurine. So that's interesting. Yeah, carry on, guys.
Who's next?
Go on, Steve. I know you want to jump in on this.
No, it's fine. You carry on if you've got something right.
The only thing that I would add is that ketones, beta-hydroxybutyrate, has been known to increase mechanical efficiency of the heart by as much as 70%, which is an incredible amount. So, I mean, there's if something is becoming more efficient, then you would argue that it's causing less damage. But that's super simplistic terms. I know that you've got something else to add, so I'll leave you jump on.
Yes, says, have any of you heard of carnivore healing heart muscle issues? Yes. That was my answer. And the thing is, Jonathan, there, we both know Harry, and yes, that's Harry's thing. Harry Sopanos. He's not a GB person, so we can't have him on. He's not allowed. He's a foreigner. He's, but if we could, he's brilliant. And he would definitely talk about his first-hand experience. So we're going to wrap up with this sage advice from Aaron. Eating bacon at least twice a day can reduce your chance of being a vegan by 100%. Please share to raise awareness. So thank you for that, Aaron. I'm going to ask Jonathan to wrap up because he was the brainchild behind this. So I think he should take the credit for it. And I've just been basically pressing the knobs. So here we go, Jonathan.
I appreciate you spending the time pressing the buttons tonight, Stephen. It does take a lot of back office work to actually put this together, and so nicely as well. I just wanted to say thank you as well for the beautiful graphics around us, the names that are above us, and the logo which Stephen did design himself. It's much appreciated. So for anyone wondering who we are, I'm Jonathan. My channel is Carnivore Muscle. Phil Escott is Phil Escott from the channel Phil Escott. Richard Smith is from the channel Keto Pro. Ben Hunt, he kind of collaborates with Phil Escott, and they run something called the Big Fat Challenge. And there's also Coach Stephen, which is Coach Stephen Thomas BSc. We all have YouTube channels, services, products, consultations, stuff we basically promote. I suggest checking that out if you have not yet already. And if you want any more information about any of us, check out our channels, go to email us and collaborate that way. And this is a live Q&A session every Tuesday night at 7 p.m. We may do one next week, depending on what guys are up to at that time. We'll see. But till next time, we'll see you guys there.
Yeah, and I'm just going to say we should actually have credits, and then we should all be saying, good night, Phil. Good night, Ben. Good night, Richard. If anyone's old enough to remember that.
Wilson's, isn't it?
Anyway, maybe we'll instigate that. Thanks a lot. Bye.